Connaissance, recherche, sciences,
et sciences mathématiques,
théorie,
physique,
philosophie,
conférence,
archéologie,
nature.
As you probably know, this meeting will be in English because we have a majority of speakers who are not Francophone. So again, welcome here to this beautiful amphitheater, Marguerite de Navarre. It's a pleasure for Philippe Sansonetti and myself to host you for these 2 days. As you know, vaccinology has probably never been so vivid, with almost one truly novel vaccine coming to the market every year over the last 20 years. And more recently, we've seen conjugate vaccines, we've seen HPV, VLPs, we've seen live-attenuated rotavirus, and all these vaccines have been based on very good, in-depth, basic research and really represented breakthroughs in our field. But at the same time, vaccinology is facing new challenges, and you all know this. The diversity of necessary vaccines increases as their cost-benefit efficiency is recognized highest among public health interventions, but also the level of safety which is required is increasing. New niches appear: the very young, the adolescent, the old, the very old, hospitalized and immunocompromised patients, pregnant women, bioterrorism. All these are sort of new areas which have their specificities and which certainly require new visions and new approaches. And let's also not forget that there is a need for vaccine against several neglected infectious diseases, especially parasitic diseases in the developing world. So in addition to this, which is sort of the diversity issue, the vaccines to be tackled also appear of increasing complexity. I mean, this is, of course, the case for what's the so-called big three, HIV, malaria, tuberculosis, but it's also true for pediatric vaccines, enteric infections, for instance, ETEC, Shigella, acute respiratory infection in children, RSVs, for instance, as well as arboviruses, particularly dengue. All these are representing vaccines which have their sort of built-in complexity, which really requires at the moment a lot of basic research before we can go with something promising. And last but not least, as we've seen recently, there is a need to rapidly develop efficient and innocuous vaccine to control emerging infectious agents. And this is introducing another complex parameter in this already complex equation. So tackling all these challenges at once is, I would say, our collective scientific and medical responsibility. For the academic arena, for us in particular, it seems that better knowledge of the host immune responses to the relevant pathogens is really now at the top of our agenda. If one wants to be able to do as well as, and if not better than nature, and then this is a bit of the key to this cryptic title that we gave to this symposium today. And I must say that, and I think this is probably going to be one of the sort of motto of this meeting, human immunology is something to which we certainly haven't paid enough attention and which is a key in this scheme of research that is required for these new vaccines. So we do hope that you will enjoy these 2 days. It's been a pleasure to organize this symposium with Philippe Sansonetti. It's actually a tale of two Philippe. And this is sort of a merging of our two chairs, molecular immunology and microbiology and infectious disease. We thought it was an interesting experience to get together on this sort of priority agenda for vaccine development. What I would like to say also is that this symposium would not have been possible if we didn't get the help and commitment of two younger scientists, Armel Phalippon and Frédéric Tangy, and I wish and we wish to thank them for their support. It's been a real delight to work with them on the organization of this meeting. Both of them are scientists working at the Institute Pasteur. They have part of the research dedicated to vaccine development, but they also together run, and they have run over the last 3 years now, a very successful international vaccinology course, which is really dedicated to cover all the facets of this, I would say in a way, emerging discipline, vaccinology, which again encompasses so many different areas from basic science to research and development, and so on and so forth. I'm not going to get into the details, but thank you very much, Armel and Frédéric, for your input in the organization of this meeting. Thank you also to Gisèle Le Cabellec and Colette Jacquemin, who is not here, for your also great support in organizing this. And with this and my gratitude to all the speakers who accepted to come, some of them from very far, some of them from less far, but you know, in Paris, in times of strikes of public transportation, it's always an achievement to come to a meeting. So thank you very much to be here. And with this, I think I will turn the podium to Philippe Kurilski, who will introduce our keynote lecturer today, Stanley Plotkin, and probably also tell you a little bit of welcome words and a few words on the Collège de France, in which we have the pleasure to be teaching. Thank you, Philippe.
Well, thank you, Philippe, and thank you all. Thank Armel, thank Frédéric, thank Gisèle, Frank. Well, welcome in Collège de France, and just a few words about this institution, because it's a very special institution, and for those and our special guests who come here, they may not know so much about it. Collège de France was created by King François I, more than 470 years ago, and partly because the French university, the Sorbonne, had become clerical. So, for example, they couldn't teach, it was forbidden to teach in Hebrew or Greek in the Sorbonne. Latin was the only language which was accepted. And Collège de France was created in reaction against this, with two rules of freedom. First rule is that the professors would be free to teach whatever they like. Okay? And whatever they want. The only rule is that this would be, the mode of teaching would be accepted by the College of Professors. So it's a self-perpetuated sort of system. And the second rule is that the attendance is completely free. It's free in all respects. Anybody can come, anybody can sit in, anybody can leave. There is no fee. It's completely free. There are no exams. There is nothing. It's culture, it's completely free in all respects. What's remarkable in Darwinian terms is that this has survived for almost 5 centuries and is actually, in my view, one of the most dynamic institutions, academic institutions in France. There are 56 chairs right now, and out of which 5 are rotating chairs. That is, there is one professor every year. But most of the chairs are held by professors who have to teach in a field, and the field is selected such that it's supposed to bring something new that university would not easily provide. And so there is no fixed chair. There is actually only one. The one of Claude Bernard is the one which is perpetuated. But when a professor retires, we meet several times a year. And by the way, we meet on Sundays, which is claimed to be historically a way to tell to the Sorbonne that the clerical aspects do not have to be. And then we decide on which area should be sort of selected to be tackled in terms of new knowledge. And so the spectrum of chairs is moving all the time. And that, again, self-perpetuates and has self-perpetuated for centuries. Now, one point I wanted to make, and that will bring to a practical question, is the following. So a few years ago, actually only three years ago, we started to podcast and record the conferences. And this is done for about half of the chairs and for some of the most important international symposia that we hold here. Okay. And the result of this is amazing. Our teaching duties are about 10 hours a year, which looks ridiculous to most people. But there is one condition, is that because the mandate is to teach science as it's being done, the rule is that we never teach twice the same thing. We have to change every year. So it's always new teaching. So actually, it's a certain load of work to teach in this institution. Well, anyway, the result of the podcasting and the recording the lectures and the symposia is somewhat amazing. With about 25 professors plus a number of symposia, about 300 or 400 hours of lecturing. The result is that now, the last count is, I think, 6 million hours have been charged. And that means that we have a virtual audience, which may be as big as 10 times the physical audience in this room. And this is why we are very keen to record and spread the knowledge, which is the mandate of this institution. We know, by the way, that 40% is outside of France. And clearly, since much of the teaching is in French, it goes to, North America, Switzerland, Belgium, but also a lot in Africa. But 15% is more or less in English and recorded and listened in English countries. So this is an important operation here. And this is why, for those of the speakers who accept that gain, we asked that you sign a form which allows us for the spreading, first for you to be recorded, and second for these records to be spread around. And so Giselle here will ask the speakers to sign the form, and if you don't want to sign, you don't sign, and that's it. That's no problem. Okay. Now, to the point, and the point now is Stanley. And Stanley Plotkin doesn't need an introduction. Actually, if I would read all the honors and tell you all about Stanley, that would take the entire symposium. Stanley is American, was trained in New York, and then started developing vaccines in all possible settings. First in an academic setting, and then he moved for a number of years in the company called Pasteur Mérieux-Connaught at the time, and that company has become Sanofi Pasteur, one of the three leading companies in the world. Stanley has been working in all kinds of vaccines, and it's more important to emphasize this rather than the honors. He developed the rubella vaccine, the one which is used all over the world right now. He worked on the pentavalent rotavirus vaccine recently, if I'm correct, and co-developed it. But he worked extensively on dozens of vaccines, including polio, rabies, of course, varicella, cytomegalovirus, and others. Actually, I met Stanley when I spent 3 years with Pasteur Mérieux-Connaught, and he was taking care of the medical side of things, and I was taking care of the research. And there happened to be a third guy, who turns out to be in this audience, Michel Klein. And altogether, I think we experienced a lot of very interesting work on many vaccines which are not yet on the market. And hopefully some of them will show up one day, and maybe the HIV vaccine, or little parts of the HIV vaccine one day might perhaps show up. But I'm sure Stanley will maybe address this issue. Stanley is extremely highly respected and recognized in the field of vaccines. Now, what is less known is that he has a fantastic sense of humor, and what's even less known is that, I learned that yesterday night, 4 years ago, he started learning how to fly, and now he flies his own aircraft. He has a little plane and he flies, which is, I think, a remarkable thing. Stanley, it's very kind of you to have accepted to come to this meeting and deliver the keynote address, and nobody else could do that better than you, what you're going to do. Thanks a lot.